Hello travelers, Boardman21 here, and today we're going to do another 1 to 75 leveling guide, but this time for the Primalist to Druid using Werebear form. This will not be towards the Earthquake build, which we know will probably be nerfed or even go away in the future, but since the updates for the Primalist and the transformations has been delayed till 8.4, we're going to go ahead and dig into it and do an update where we're not using entangling roots and we're building into 100% crit chance with swipe, so we're going to go back to the normal Werebear mode. Guide will be the exact same as all the other guides, where I'm going to break it down at specific levels, show you where I put my points, talk about the character sheet so that you can see everything that I do. In the description we'll have the loot filter, we'll have the build planner, and of course the written guide so that you can go in there and have a written version of where all the points go so that you can see exactly how I do it if you don't want to watch the video. Alright, let's go ahead and dig into it. Alright, travelers, we are now level 4, still deathless. We're going to try and stay deathless through this entire thing. I'm going to go a little slower than normal, explain things a little bit more for the Werebear, because it can have some confusing mechanics, especially once we get into the critical strike back. Try to reduce the swipe down to 2 mana so we can get 3 back on refund. Building into spell damage for the Wizened Claws. It can get a little confusing, so we're going to go a little slower and talk through it on each of the updates, and we're also going to try and stay completely deathless, as the Werebear is one of the tanky characters, so it should be easier. So far, all I found is an amulet. That's all we're wearing. Got a little bit of lightning resist on it. We are going to be building into quite a bit of armor on this character. That's going to be really powerful for us. And then, of course, we'll be capping the resistance and stacking a lot of health. For skills, we opened up our first skill specialization slot, and we're going to spec into Ice Thorns. Ice Thorns is one of the skills that we can use while in Werebear, because when we get hit, there'll be a chance to proc it. So the first thing we're going to do with it, we're going to build down here to where we can get into the chance when hit to cast Ice Thorns. So we're going to put 1 point in Dagger Thorns. And then for passives, we got 2 points. Both points I'm going to put into Natural Attunement, so we can go ahead and get some lightning and cold resist. It's not super helpful, but this is also going to give us more mana, so once we do start getting into Werebear, which we can't do until we actually master, so we'll be about level 25, it's going to give us more mana as well, so we'll have lots of mana before we fight the whole falling out of the transformation. And that will be it for this update. I'll see you guys at level 9. Alright, travelers, we're now level 9, still deathless, going strong. We got 14% physical, we're starting to get our elemental together, and then we picked up a shield that had some void resistance on it, so that's super effective. Obviously, the main element at this point in the game that you're really facing is a lot of void, a little bit of physical, and then a little bit of elemental. The bosses are more elemental than anything else. We're still stacking a little bit of armor. We do have a little bit of dodge, but that's not something that we'll be going for on this build. For skills, I do have an extra point for Ice Thorns. We found a chest with +1 to Ice Thorns already, so I'll have 1 more point than you might have. But for now, we're going to go with 2 more points in Dagger Thorns, and then I'm going to put 2 points in Bramble Armor, but if you only have 1, that's okay. And now whenever we take a hit, we're going to have a 20% chance for Ice Thorns to be cast. For our second skill, we're going to go ahead and spec into Swipe. Obviously, this is a skilled Werebear that we'll be using for the entire durability of this build. For Swipe, the very first point, I'm going to go ahead and put into Aspect of the Panther. This is going to allow us to get 2 stacks of Aspect of the Panther when we attack. The buffs last for 4 seconds, and each stack that we have will grant us 10% extra damage, which is really nice. For passives, we got 6 more points. We're going to go ahead and cap out the natural attunement. This will give us more lightning and cold resist, and of course it gives us more mana as well. And that'll be it for this update. I'll see you guys at level about 12 or 13 when we do another update. Alright, Travelers, I'm now level 12. We're just about to take on another boss. We got just over 200 health. We have quite a bit more elemental resist. Obviously, our lightning and cold went up a bunch from our passives that we have, but we're also working on getting our fire up, our void up, and then our physical is also really important right now. We don't really need too much necrotic, and we're probably not going to need poison on this character at all, even until 75. We're still working on trying to get some armor, but at the moment, we're more focused on just trying to get some resistances on our gear. For skills, I got 1 more point for Ice Thorns. Going to go ahead and put it into Spell Thorns, so there's another 5% chance that when we get hit, that will proc it. This is also going to give it a little extra damage. For Swipe, we got 3 more points. We're going to put 2 of them in Aspect of the Panther, and then 1 of them in Feline Hunter, so we can attack a little bit faster. And then we'll go ahead and build into the crit chance, and we're going to build into the crit multi, and then we'll come back, and we're going to build into the leech and some extra area with it. For passives, we've got 3 more points. We're going to go ahead and put 1 point in Harmony of Blades so that when we need to, we can do a weld. But then we also want as much health as possible, so we're going to start building into Hunter's Restoration and cap this out, as it does give us increased percentage of health. And this does unlock the Saber, so even though we're not going to spec into the Saber, I am going to run the Saber and the Wolf at the same time, so that we can get a little extra damage, as you know, you're either using Ice Thorns or you're using Swipe right now. They're not the hardest hitting skills, so having a couple of pets with you is going to do a little bit of extra damage. Anyways, that's going to be it for this update. I'll see you guys at level 19 when we spec into our 3rd skill. Alright, Travelers, I'm now level 19. We've got over 300 health. We're still working on our resistance, but our elemental's still getting much higher. We've got a bit more void, which has really helped. We're still sitting at 12% armor. For damage types, really haven't added much, but we do have dual wielding going on, so we have an axe and a sword on. For skills, we're going to go ahead and put 2 more points in Ice Thorns, both of them going into Spell Thorns, so there's even greater chance when we get hit for them to proc. For Swipe, we got 3 more points. Going to go ahead and put 1 more into Aspect of the Panther. We're going to put 2 of them into Way of the Hunt so that we can have that leech. It's going to be really helpful for us to be able to keep our life full, especially since we're dual wielding now. We're taking a lot more damage. And then for the third skill, you can spec anything that you want, but as soon as we hit level 25, we're going to unspec it and switch to Werebear, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave it blank for now. For passives, we've got 8 more points. We're going to cap out the 3 points that we need in Hunter's Restoration. That'll give us some more health. Then we're going to put 1 point in Primal Strength, and then we're going to put 4 points into, as soon as this icon disappears, it'll show me the Survival of the Pack. This gives us more melee damage, and it's also going to give us even more leech, which is really nice. And if you are running companions, it'll allow you to have your companions will have a little more damage, a little more survivability as well. And that'll be it for this update. I'll see you guys at level 25. Alright, Travelers, I'm now level 25. Time to choose our mastery. Then we're going to spec into our third skill, which will be the Werebear form. Right now we're sitting at just over 400 health. Our resistances have gone down a little bit for the elemental. We end up taking the Avarice gloves off, but we are still working on our resistances. We'll be crafting a little bit more. Our armor percentages drop because we're a little higher level, but we will be building more into that. Once we're in Werebear form, our armor is going to jump up quite a bit, as we will get some armor inside of Werebear form just for being transformed. For skills, we got 2 more points for Ice Thorns. We're going to go ahead and cap out the Spell Thorns. Then we're going to go ahead and put 1 point in Anemophilia as we head towards getting that Thorn Shield, so we'll get additional armor from this as well. And then we can build into that chance to recast, so we can have a lot more of them active. We got 2 more points for Swipe. We're going to go ahead and put 1 in Ambush and 1 in Wingarian Reach, so that we can have that increased area, a little bit more damage, higher critical strike chance. And eventually we are going to want to build into this 3 points for Trapper, so that we have that 60% hit damage against slowed enemies. Then for our third skill, once we choose our mastery here, which will be the Werebear form, so we get that 20% increased health and mana. That health is going to be really nice. We'll choose that, take that, go into our skills, open up the Werebear form. We got 4 points. The first thing that I'm going to go for in here is more defense. We're going to take the flat armor, the increased armor. We're going to put 4 points in that, and then we're going to want to get in the Wisdom Claws so we can go ahead and start building into spell damage, because every 1% of spell damage is going to give us 1% more melee damage and 1% more critical strike chance, which is really powerful. So you're basically turning one stat into a dual hybrid stat, which is going to be really powerful for us. So we'll be building into that with our next 2 points. Then we'll be building into the Rip and Tear, and then eventually we're going to want to make charge be as fast as possible, refund our mana, and then down the backside we're going to build into the 100% more damage against stunned enemies. For passives, we got 1 more point in Primalist before we can put points into the other things, so we're going to put 1 more point in Survival of the Pack. Now that we got 20 points in there, we're going to go Beastmaster, not Druid yet, Beastmaster. We're going to put 5 points in Ursane Strength. We're actually going to cap this out, but we want to get a couple points into Boarheart, so we're going to put 2 points into Boarheart as well. So when we take a melee attack, we'll proc this, and then this will give us a buff of 15% less damage taken for 2 seconds with a 2-second cooldown. So it is possible to get 100% uptime of that if you get hit again right when it falls off. But we'll be capping these out first, and then we'll go back to the Druid tree, and then we'll build into the Druid Mastery and get all of our points in there. And that's going to be it for this update. I'll see you guys at level 34 when we spec into our 4th specialization skill. Alright, Travelers, I'm now level 34. We've unlocked our 4th specialization slot. We got almost 600 health. We're still working on our resistances. We've got a bit of elemental, but we still need to get our physical up. And at this point, having some necrotic would be nice, but we still haven't got any, just haven't had the right drops. We are stacking quite a bit of armor. Once we're in Werebear, it's actually quite a bit higher. You can see we jump up to 26% damage reduction. We are trying to stack that, so we're going to want a lot of increased and flat armor on our gear in every slot that we can have it that doesn't negate us from getting our capped resistance. And then other than that, we haven't really put on much damage. We are going for melee physical damage, so put on as much melee physical damage as you can add it. And if you have increased physical damage, that works too. You also want as much crit chance as you could possibly get, as we are working towards getting 100%. For skills, we got 3 more points for Ice Thorn. We're going to put 1 point in Thorn Shield and then 2 points into the Bulb Shield, so there's a chance for it to recast. For Swipe, we got 3 more points. Going to go ahead and put 2 of them in Ambush for more critical strike chance. And then we're going to put another one in the area and another 5% more damage with 1 point in Wingarian Reach. For Werebear, we got 7 points. We're going to go ahead and put 1 in Wizened Claws and 1 point in Star Claw. And at this point, you can now start putting spell damage on your gear. Every 1% spell damage is going to give you 1% more melee damage and 1% more critical strike chance, which is going to be really nice for it. We're going to cap out the Ursane Heart, so we get another 50 flat armor as well as another 5% increased. And then we want 3 points in Rip and Tear, so that as long as we've charged in the last 4 seconds, we're going to have 75% increased damage and another 75% crit chance. This does stack, so once we reduce the cooldown of charge so that we can charge more often, about once every 2 seconds, we can actually get multiple stacks of the Rip and Tear. And then that last point, we're going to go ahead and put in a Nerving Blow so that when we do a critical strike chance, or when we do a critical strike with Swipe, we're going to get our mana back at this point. This is going to help us stay in Werebear form just a little bit longer. And then for our 4th skill, we're going to go ahead and put into the Summon Bear. This will be the one pet that we run, since we're not going to do Summon Thorn Totem and we're not going to do Entangling Roots because it's too much mana at this point. We are going to run the Solo Bear. For him, he's really tanky. We're going to make him retaliate a bunch, so we're going to put 1 point in Thick Hide, then 1 point in Retaliatory Thorns. We're also going to put 1 point in Lacerating Claws, and then 1 point in Thorn Bear. And this way, he cast Briarthorn, but now he also retaliates every time that he takes 30 damage. Now, he's going to constantly, he's basically a spell bear at this point because there's no cooldown on the Briarthorn. So we are going to work towards getting the cooldown put on it with the 4-second cooldown of Ursane and Duration. So for now, 1 point in Barbed Thorns, but you are going to want another point here and then a point in Ursane Endurance as soon as you can. Otherwise, he's not going to get in melee range, and if he's not in melee range, he takes less hits and he doesn't retaliate as much. For passives, we got another 13 points. We're going to go ahead and do some points in Beastmaster. We're going to cap out the Ursane Strength, and then we're also going to cap out the Boar Heart so that we have that 5 seconds of aspect of the boar when we do take a melee attack. 2-second cooldown. If you get hit again, you can refresh it and keep it up as long as you're taking melee hits. That leaves us with 7 points, which we'll put all in the Druid Mastery. All 7 are going to go in Barkskin. Going to give us more flat armor, and it's going to give us that endurance, so we'll take less damage once we hit that threshold cap for endurance. And that's going to be it for this update. I'll see you guys at level 42 when we do some more spec-in before some bosses. Alright, Travelers, I'm now level 42. We're still working on getting our crit chance again. Once we get to 48 and we have access to those Raider axes, that's where a lot of our crit chance will come. But we have built into a little spell damage. We found an idol with some spell damage while transformed. So our critical strike is getting a bit higher. You can see down here it says our melee critical strike chance is 19%. When we charge, we get a little bit more than that. So it is a little bit higher, and then inside the swipe tree we have some critical strike there as well. So once we've swiped and hit an enemy, it does get up a bit. We have about 40% when we're actually in combat. We do have 34% armor. Again, armor is going to be like one of our main defenses. We are going to want to cap the resistance, so keep working on those. I have my cold capped right now. I'm still trying to get more physical. We're definitely going to want to cap all of them. Poison, you don't really need to do. But you're going to want to get to like 60% armor plus, because that's going to be 60% more damage reduction for physical. And then, of course, 70% of that, so about 48% or so damage reduction for all the other elements, which is a huge portion of damage reduction. So since you have access to increased armor and flat armor inside Werebear, definitely go for that. And then for skills, we got 2 more points for Ice Thorns. We're going to go ahead and cap out the Bulb Shield. There's now a 40% chance for it to recast every time that we get hit, and it actually procs. For Swipe, we got 2 more points. We're going to put 1 more in Ambush for that critical strike chance, and then 1 point in Apex Predator. We are going to want to build into Culling, and then into the Trapper as well. Once we get slow on an amulet or on a weapon, so we can actually apply it, that's when we'll build into this, so we can get that 60% more damage. For Werebear, we got 3 more points. We're going to cap out the Rip and Tear. So we get 100% increased damage and 100% crit chance every time that we use charge. We're going to reduce the cooldown of charge, so 1 point in Hightail. And then we're going to put 1 point in Pummel. We're going to slowly build down here and get that 100% increased damage against stun enemies. Remember, with weapons for the suffix, you're going to want increased stun chance and increased stun chance with melee attacks. Both of those are going to work really well. So if you have 2 crafted weapons, make sure you get slow on one of them if you don't have it on an amulet, but just the rest of it, go for as much stun chance as possible so that we can stun lock and do really good damage against enemies. For the bear, we got another 7 points. Right now it's a spell bear because it's got the Briar Thorns that it's casting every time that it takes 30 damage. And then for its main attacks, you know, it's attacking from range. We don't want that, so we're going to give it a 4-second cooldown, so 1 more point in Barbed Thorns. Then 1 point in Ursane Endurance, so that it has that 4-second cooldown, so it'll go back in melee range and get hit more. And then again, we're not doing any minion affixes, so you want as much defense for the bear as possible inside of its own tree. So we're going to go ahead and cap out the Thick Hide. And then for passives, we got 13 more points. We're going to put all of them inside of the Druid. We're going to cap the Bark Skin. We're going to cap out the Blood Claws. This will give us more damage because we'll have that physical penetration, and then we also have the physical damage leeches health, so now we're going to have a lot more leech. That leaves us with 6 points, and we're going to go ahead and put all that into Spirit Claws so we have even more damage. And that's going to be it for this update. I'll see you guys at level 49. Alright, Travelers, I'm now level 49. We have just over 1,000 health. We are still working on our resistances. We're still stacking up the armor. We get quite a bit, you know, once we get hit a few times, proc the Ice Thorns, it all works out. We have a much higher critical strike chance when we charge and when we use Slipe. We get up to 67% right now. We're not going to get the Raider Axes till we're level 55, but as soon as we dual wield those, we're going to have 100% crit, no problem. For skills, we got 2 more points for Ice Thorns. Going to go ahead and put both of them into Bark Shield so that we can get 40 more additional armor every time that it procs. For Swipe, we got 1 more point. I'm going to go ahead and put it into the Apex Predator for more Critical Strike Multiplier. 1 more point for Werebear. We're going to put it into Bash so that we have increased stun chance, but this also unlocks the Skull Crush. We're going to want this because we're still able to stun enemies right now pretty easily, so getting that 100% hit damage against them is really nice. It'll double our damage. For the Bear, we got 3 more points. We're going to go ahead and start putting into the Nightshade Bear, so every time that he procs his Briar Thorns and they go out and do their hits, they're going to have a chance to poison. It's going to increase his damage quite a bit. His survivability is not going to go up very much, but once we cap that, we'll come back and we're going to give him some additional armor so he's got damage reduction. And then as our last skill, we're going to go ahead and put into Summon Thorn Totem, and the reason we're going to go into Thorn Totem is we will wear one 1x4 idol that has chance to proc Thorn Totem on hit so that we can get it in Werebear. And then the other 3 idols that we wear will all be 1x3s, and you want the affixes increase spell damage while transformed. And then for the suffix, you want increased spell damage while you have a totem active. And they'll both roll up to 40%, so you can get up to 80% spell damage for having your totems active. If you have 3 of those, that means you can get up to a maximum of 240% spell damage, which is 240% more melee damage and 240% more critical strike chance, which is huge for this build. It's going to be a lot more damage, and then you're going to get to that 100% crit, no problem. So the first 6 points, we're obviously going to play it where we proc, 5 of them. We're also going to use them for armor shred. So we're going to put 2 points in Forested Expanse, 3 points in Eternal Forest, and then, 4 points there because we clicked it, but we're going to build into the Grove Mine so that when it does proc, which I haven't found the idol yet, we're going to get all 5 of them at once, and then build into that Armor Shred and build into Poison, so they are doing damage for us, and the Armor Shred's going to allow us to hit enemies much harder. For passives, we got 8 more points. We're going to put them all in the Druid Mastery. We're going to cap out the Spirit Claws with 2 more points there for that physical damage, and then we really want to build into the Rootborn Wrath. This is going to increase our spell damage. We're going to cap this out because that gives us 25% spell damage, which is really 25% more melee damage and 25% more critical strike chance. And then we're going to put into Eternal Nature. We're going to cap this out next because that attunement gives us mana efficiency with Swipe. We're still trying to reduce it down to a 2 mana cost. And then, of course, this gives us health, which increases our survivability. And that'll be it for this update. I'll see you guys at level 55. Alright, travelers, we are now level 55. We have just over 1300 health. We're still working on capping our resist. We've currently got void, physical, and cold all capped. Still working on the elemental a little bit, and then we do need to get our necrotic up. It's the only thing that we're really lacking at this point. We do still have about the same amount of armor, sitting at 33%, but that does jump up quite high, especially if we round up mobs and let a few hits get in. The Ice Thorns gives us a lot of armor per time it gets procced. And then for damage types, we have just over 100% melee damage, because we are stacking a lot of that spell damage, that's why that's so high. And we do need to get a bit more critical strike multiplier, but we are sitting at just over 70% critical strike chance when we're in battle now. We do have one Raider Axe on. Once we get the second one with a good implicit on it, we're going to be at that 100% crit, no problem. For skills, we got one more point for Ice Thorns. Going to go ahead and continue to put into Bark Shield. For swipe, we got one more point. We're going to go ahead and start working towards the Trapper for the extra damage against slowed enemies. We do have slow on the Raider Axe that we put on. So I'm going to put 1 point in Culling for now, and then we're going to put 3 points into the Trapper, and then we'll come back for the critical strike chance. For Werebear, we got one more point. We're going to go ahead and put it into Skull Crush so that when we hit a stunned enemy, we'll now do 50% more damage against them. That is a more damage modifier. For the bear, we got one more point. We're going to go ahead and put it into the armored bears for the 150 additional armor. He has been dying a little bit, so we're going to try and buff him up a little bit. And then for the Summon Thorn Totem, we got 10 points. We're going to max out that Forested Expanse. We're going to put that point in Grove Mine. And then you have the Armor Shred, which is down here through the bottom. We want to build into that, so we're going to put 1 point into Ancient Power, 2 points into Impale, and then we're going to put 4 points, so the last 4 points into Shred Armor, so that when the Thorn Totems do get procced, they will have that Armor Shred chance. You can get 100% on hit. You'll have 5 of the Thorn Totems, so that's 5 hits that the enemies will be able to get shredded. If you have a lot of enemies, they're all going to get hit. And then the other thing, we still don't have an idol to actually proc the Thorn Totems, but as soon as we find one, that'll start going off for us. And then for passives, we got 7 more points. They're all going to go into the Druid class. We're going to put all of them into the Eternal Nature. And that'll be it for this update. I'll see you guys at level 65 for the next one. Alright, Travelers, we're now level 65. We have just over 1500 health. We're still working on our resistances, but we're much closer to capped. We just need a little bit more lightning, a little bit more necrotic, and just a tad bit more void. Our armor's still getting a little higher. We're still working on trying to find some increased armor to put on our helm, chest, and boots, or maybe even on our amulet if we find a nice amulet roll with one. But that should easily get us up. Right now, Ice Thorns is still our savior. Once we take a bunch of hits, proc that a few times, we easily get to the 50% damage reduction, and it really makes us feel really tanky. For damage types, we have almost 200% melee damage now. That'll go up. We still don't have an idol to proc Thorn Totems, so we haven't been able to do that yet, but once that happens, we'll get the extra spell damage, which will increase that melee damage and crit chance, and we'll be at that 100% crit, and we'll be well over the 200% increased damage. For skills, we got 2 more points for Ice Thorns. I'm going to go ahead and put both of them in Eternal Protection so that we keep that armor for a bit longer. We got 2 points for Swipe. We're going to put both of them in Trapper. We do have Slow on our weapons now, so we do apply it after a couple of hits, and this is going to allow us to do more damage against slowed enemies, so it'll really help. For Werebear, we got 3 more points. We are going to cap out the Skull Crush for another 50% hit damage. We are stunning quite often, so it is going to work quite well for us. And then the other 2 points we have, we're going to go ahead and reduce the cooldown for charge, because it is stackable, so now we'll be able to charge multiple times and stack that 100% crit and 100% increased damage, which is going to allow us to hit harder, which in turn allows us to stun more, because that's used in the formula, which in turn makes us hit even harder. So it's just it's a big synergy for us. Hit hard, stun, hit harder. It's going to work great. Then for the bear, we got 2 more points. We're going to go ahead and cap out the Nightshade Bear, so it does have a 100% chance to poison every time the Briar Thorns and Ice Thorns goes off. 2 more points for Summon Thorn Totem. We're going to cap that Shred Armor. Then we're going to start building towards the poison chance, so 1 point into Atomic Wisdom. For passives, we got 10 more points. We're going to cap the Eternal Nature. Then we're going to put 4 points in Soul's Attendant. This is going to give us more attunement, and then we're going to go ahead and put the rest of our points in Ursane Maul, so that we now have 60% more critical strike chance. Whenever we do a crit, which is almost all the time now, we'll gain the buff Ferocity, which gives us 50% increased damage. So it'll be really nice. 50% increased physical damage, which is all the damage we're doing, which means we'll be able to leech even more. And that'll be it for this update. I'll see you guys at level 75. Alright, Travelers, we're now level 75. We got over 1700 health. We have worked on capping our resistance. We're a little low on Void right now. We're switching some items around. We don't have much poison, but everything else is pretty close to capped. And we have quite a bit more armor than we had before. We did build into some increased armor percentage on our helm, which really helped. We did cap out our endurance. We also capped out the critical strike avoidance. And then for damage types, we're still sitting under 200% melee damage. Still didn't find a single Thorn Totem proc on hit, which is unfortunate because we were going to get more spell damage with that, so we're still looking for that. But if you have one, make sure to be putting it on, get those Thorn Totems procking. For skills, we have 1 more point for Swipe. We're going to go ahead and max out the Trappers. We get another 20% more damage against slowed enemies. For Werebear, we got 1 more point. We're also going to go ahead and throw this into the Pummel, so we get another 3 added melee physical damage. For the Bear, we got 1 more point. Going to go ahead and throw it into the Armored Bear so he has more protection. You probably noticed I didn't use him very much in the gameplay at all. You can use him if you want. I just hate whenever he goes down. I don't like to go back and revive him. You really don't need him, but there's no other skills that you're going to be able to throw in that slot and actually use. So either feel free to, keep reviving him to use him or not use him. You can definitely build some minion stats onto gear. I didn't do that. We did get a tier 6 exalted minion health regen, which we put on in the last few minutes. It did help him a little bit. But once you get into the higher timelines and add on some modifiers, he just kind of starts dying if you don't have any minion stats on gear. And then for the Summon Thorn Totem, we're going to go ahead and put another point into Atomic Wisdom. The last point we have for it, we're going to go ahead and put in Venom Tipped Thorns. This will increase the poison chance. We've already got the Armor Shed, so once we do start proccing them, we will get a lot more Armor Shed being applied to our enemies, which is going to allow us to do even more damage. And then for passives, we've got 10 more points. We're going to go ahead and cap out the Ursane Maul. This is going to give us even more critical strike chance. And then, of course, with the rest of the points that we have, we're going to go ahead and put into Soothing Slaughter. And what this is going to do, we got another 60% critical strike chance. This will also give us health every time we do a crit, which we do 100% of the time. So it's really going to help you keep your health full and crit more often. And that's going to be it for this guide.